Thank you. Beautiful. So on Wednesday or Tuesday, Jeff sent out a link to the Brene Brown TED Talk. And just to provide a little bit of structure to it, we have created some questions, but I'm going to turn it over to Jeff because he has the notes and the questions. I do know that the first question that we had written down was to ask, of all that you heard in that 20-minute TED Talk, and there were some fabulous nuggets of wisdom, what might have resonated the most with you? And if you would share that with us, that would be great. And just a technological sidebar, thank you for muting yourselves. And if you would like, if you scroll down to the bottom of your screen where you found your microphone, if you look further to the right, you're going to see a little button that says reactions. And if you click on that, you get two different hands. One is a clap and one is like a thumbs up or something like a hand. And so you can raise your hand that way. And Susan, I think you said you found your, yeah, Susan found her hand. Valerie found a thumbs up. So you can let us know that you've got something you want to say, or you can applaud somebody's comment by using some of those little reaction symbols.
What if they disagree? Can they?
I don't think there's a thumbs down icon.
No, okay. Thought I'd ask.
Or a,
Yeah,
I don't think there's a raspberry
a
icon.
Bronx cheer.
So the question then out to everybody is, what resonated with you? What note did you take and go, oh, wow, that's really cool? And unmute yourselves if you'd like to talk.
Well, one of the things that resonated. I'm sorry?
That was you.
Oh, that was me. This notion that our vulnerability is based on shame, or the feeling that I'm not worthy enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not perfect enough. And it is a sense of vulnerability is coped with by hiding who we are and how we are, because we're afraid others will disapprove or find us wanting in some way. And when I originally began listening to the talk, I was thinking that she was going to be talking about humility. And in fact, she was talking about vulnerability, and those are two different things. So that was one of the things that struck me, is that as a community, we will ask the community for feedback on things like our surveys or our need to know what your sense of direction would be for the organization, or how you think we can improve things. And sometimes we don't get much response. And I question, is that because people are still thinking about it, or is that because they just don't care to respond? Or is it that they're afraid of putting anything out there that may be reacted to in a negative way? So that was just one of the things that I was thinking about.
Doug, Susan, and I did take the time to go into the survey. It's not very obtrusive, so it was real easy to get through. And I just looked at it and I thought, I'm just real happy with what the group is doing. I don't have any suggestions for anything better, and that's why I wasn't not paying attention. I'm giving a attaboy, or attaboy and girl. So maybe other people have the same reaction. I'm seeing some nods here and there.
I think Doug is trying or is intending to blend the idea of being vulnerable with the courage to come up with the feedback that we're looking for, to sort of stick your neck out a little bit and say something, take a little bit of a shot at, or risk at providing something for the whole group. And I like that. That's it's like right here for us to be vulnerable. in offering up something that you don't know whether people will take to it or not. And I think that's being vulnerable. You know, when you gamble a little bit, you don't take, it's not for sure what the reaction will be from people. And so you have to take what comes, you know, and respond to that. And so that, I like the bridging of those two ideas, you know, the feedback that we're soliciting for how things are going, and the response from everybody to be vulnerable about that, I guess. Yeah. Is that right? Does that kind of echo what you said, Doug?
Well,
Yeah.
oh, and I would say to Susan's point that it's part of the judgment too that I know I personally can get into, that keeps me from being vulnerable. I think that somebody thinks something, and so I avoid offering an opinion, or I avoid offering my whole self because I don't want them to think this or that. And so, Susan, I appreciate that you said that your response was a thumbs up and you didn't feel a need to say anything else, because it's easy for us to make more meaning out of that. Does that make sense? Who else, please? What else resonated?
For me,
Uh,
Barb, did you have a comment?
well, yeah, kind of expounding on what both Susan and Doug said. You know, part of being vulnerable, like when you open yourself up, you know, to me, the most hurtful thing is when I'm authentic and open myself up, and then someone makes a judgment about that there's an agenda behind it or something else when you're laying your heart out. And to me, that's more painful than almost anything else.
And that's interesting. I doubt that you're alone in that. Why? So I would offer up the question: why is that painful when we offer our hearts, but we think that we're rejected? Sherry? Sherry, can you?
Oh,
There.
yeah, I was just trying to get it done. I just agree with that. I didn't get the thumbs up hand. I got the other one, but I think that's where the fear is, that you're going to be uh, open and face your vulnerability and say what you think or do what you think you ought to do, and then somebody judges you, sometimes harshly. Been there.
Hi.
Question?
Oh, so there's courage involved to do that. She spoke to the idea of being courageous, and put it out there, put yourself out there. Where do you get the courage?
May I say something?
Yes, of course.
Well, building on what both Barb and Sherry have said, you know, I thought a lot about vulnerability, and you know, Neil and I've listened to Brene Brown before, and really like the way that she's able to encapsulate, you know, things in such easy to understand words. And I'm thinking about what y'all are saying about being judged. I think to be vulnerable is to be open, to let people see our authentic selves and what we think and what we feel. And so we have to trust our co-humans not to damage us. And sometimes they do. So we're open, we're trusting, and then somebody comes and they, you know, maybe we feel judged. And So then we don't want to be open again. We've been like a dog or something that's been kind of abused. And so then we just kind of like run away, and we don't be open throughout each moment. We're not born again. We've closed ourselves off. And I think that's the real danger, is to close ourselves off from other people. And then I think about the, the 4 agreements, don't take anything personally. And so sometimes if somebody disagrees with us, we have to all learn to disagree without being disagreeable. I mean, I love these little cliches, but they mean so much. To disagree with another point of view without judging the other person. Like, I hear what you're saying, but I still love you. And that's the trick. I think is all 7 billion of us are going to have a different take on a lot of different things. But I think that we're called to love everyone in spite of themselves, and that we're going to be loved in spite of no matter what we do. And I think trust is hand in hand in vulnerability.
Thanks, Lynn. That's great. We're going to get talking about trust next week. In that there's a real sort of connection between humility, trust, and vulnerability. Holly, you had your hand up. Would you want to weigh in here?
Well, this is about what she started out with when she was saying action is just innate with us. We're hardwired for connection, and that's what makes life meaningful. That really struck a chord with me, because it's just so true. If I don't feel connected, there's just so much missing. And then when you do feel connected with someone, it's just so rich, it's everything. So I thought that was really interesting that she said that's connection is so important, and it's really everything.
Ooh, I love that. And I would like to add a thought to that. Something occurred to me. With connection comes vulnerability, and with vulnerability comes connection. So, wow, it's the chicken or the egg. How do you be connected by being vulnerable, but how do you have the courage to take that step and trust that that person is going to love you no matter what? And yet the two so feed each other. So thanks for that, Holly. We have other people who've raised their hands.
Kim, hi.
Hi, can you hear?
Yes.
Oh, good. So the question I have from listening to you is, the trick for me is, how do I have connection even though we disagree?
Great question. Anybody want to weigh in? Even though we disagree, I actually think Lynn started talking or speaking to the idea that we're not disagreeable when we give the feedback, or when we give the feedback with, or to do good, to help a person, to be positive and encouraging rather than disparaging, judgmental, and putting a person down. Mickey's got something.
I do. I actually took a note about something Brene said at the very, very end. She said, when we believe that we're enough, we really stop screaming and start listening. That was almost a summary point of hers. So I guess what comes up for me is when we believe we're enough, and also when we believe the other person is enough and not wrong or inadequate, then that creates the vulnerability that creates the connection. That's my thought. I don't say that's the answer. That's just my thought that came up. Anybody have another thought? Oh, Barb, little girl in the purple?
Purple. I like what you're saying there, Mickey, and it's so important, and it's so easy for us to forget this, that it's not the person. It's not the person that we don't like. It's the thing, or we disagree on an issue, and so we always have to kind of like a reminder, I love the person. It's not the person, it's the idea. Right? And
I think we become, I think one of the things that I've noticed is there's an awful lot of right fighting. I'm right, and I'm gonna fight with you about it, whether I, because I need to be right or something. And that, I think that's where we end up with so many hurt feelings.
Pat, do you think that's a quality of humility to say, I'm not right about everything?
Well, and I think it's the courage to know that I don't, and the lack of ego or the vanity or whatever you want to call it, that it's okay for me to just listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, you got something?
Yes. Who was it? Kim, I think, mentioned that how do you connect with someone if you feel, what is it, vulnerable or humility? I'm not sure what she said anymore, but the first thing that came to my mind is if you want to connect with him or her, the thing that's probably keeping you from it is judgment. So I think if you can put judgment aside, you can connect with someone no matter how different the feelings or the thoughts are. That's my feeling.
Good, Jerry. Patrick?
Valerie's next.
Oh, sorry. Patrick?
I think that this need to be right is also connected to the need to be in control. And Dr. Hawkins talks about spiritual willingness to let go of the need to be in control and the willingness to trust that the divine order is in control and that we allow the divine order to be in its working for us when we trust it. And so humility is getting out of the way with your ego so that the divine order can play out the way it needs to. And that allows us then to stop being opinionated and stop insisting on our own perspectives and our own positionalities and understand that everyone has a perspective that is their own and that they all, and including yourself, believe that your perspective is the right one and maybe even the only one, and that in fact, with 9 billion people in the world, there's going to be 9 billion perspectives on the way life is. And by accepting that fact and getting out of the way of the need to be in control, then you can begin to use your compassion to understand where other people are coming from rather than the need to show them that your way is better.
Good. That's beautiful. Thank you, Doug. Somebody else had a hand up.
Valerie, yeah.
Valerie.
Unmute yourself.
Okay. Well, another thing that, she said that I had heard about a long time ago, and it just was moment was the measuring stick and how we put something on our own selves that we either measure up or measure down, but we're never quite right enough. So obviously, we all have a lot of wisdom and how to be caring and loving, but I'll take me for an example. And if anyone got into the Enneagram, because I am like fascinated by this Enneagram stuff, and I am truly a 6, and I do have courage. That's a virtue. And another thing is I'm so in the moment. So I'll just blurt out stuff. And I'm often not graceful, but I'm just vulnerable. I make myself vulnerable, not on purpose. It just happens that that's how I am. But, you know, where the sixth bad part comes in is the anxiety, because then later I have all this fear. Oh my God, what did I do that for? What did I say that for? Now nobody likes me and everyone's judging me. So all these crazy thoughts we have in our head, you know? So it's just gonna take a lot of self-work to be able to, achieve these, where we value ourselves more, and we don't worry about rejection. And one-on-one, we can go to the people that we connect with. But as a group, it is a lot harder. So
What I heard in that, Val, too, is worthiness.
yeah.
Couple
Yeah, it's just,
people.
Lorraine had a hand up.
Oh, and Patrick does too now. Who's first?
You let him fight it out. No, Lorraine.
Patrick and I don't fight, do we, Patrick? No. Yeah, that the word worthiness that you just mentioned, Mickey, is kind of what was coming up for me, and what came out strongly in Brené's message was that when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and we get this feedback from people, maybe they're judging us, maybe they say something to us that's not what we wanted to hear. If we're in a state of worthiness, feeling that we are worthy, we're going to be able to handle that, whatever comes to us. And in our vulnerability, let that be. And because we know that we are enough. We have this strong sense. When you have that strong sense of worthiness, you know you're enough. You don't, you can stand in your own truth and speak it, and don't need that validation from others. It's nice when you get it, but not have that visceral reaction to judgment that makes you stop and say, oh, I shouldn't have said that, even though that's what I believe and that's what I feel in my heart. And that's what every fiber of my being is telling me. I better not say that because somebody else is going to have a negative reaction to it. If we're feeling that strong sense of worthiness and belonging and connection, we can allow ourselves to take that in, and at the same time not feel lesser for it.
Yeah, that's fabulous, Lorraine. Thank you. A phrase that came up for me, and Patrick, I know you have your hand up, but somebody talked about being right. And I thought to myself, if I'm not right, then obviously I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, then I must not be worthy. And at our very core heart of hearts, who wants to be unworthy? So I'll keep my mouth shut because I don't want to be wrong, because I don't want to appear unworthy or stupid. So that was a thought I was having while you were talking, Lorraine. Patrick, you're next.
As I was listening at first to Brene Brown, and I'd heard that presentation before, I couldn't help but kind of think, wow, it sounds very feminine. And so I'm going to just throw something out there from my upbringing, and some of the guys may have had this, that I grew up on a little farm. Guys were quiet, silent, kissed the horse right off into the sunset. Then I was in the Army. Keep a stiff upper lip, never blink, never let the enemy, the other side, see a vulnerability, or they will take advantage of it. And I don't think I had a feeling that I would disclose until I was 30 years old. And I was proud of that because that was masculinity as it was defined to me, is to be somewhat distant, very tough, never vulnerable. That was just out of the question, because that would lay you open to being a victim of the more powerful other male or whoever in the system. So anyway, men and women, boys and girls may grow up with different messages around that. I went to a Tony Robbins program a couple of years ago, and all of you know Tony has the bang of 6,000 people in the crowd, and he has a whole program about men getting back to being masculine because women are feeling, I don't have a male partner out there anymore. I married someone that's soft and gentle like me. And so his whole program was around toughening up the guys and softening up the women. And so that would be the opposite of what Brene was talking. So just curious to know what some of you think or react, or how you grew up with messages around that.
Men, chime in.
Me? Oh.
Other men?
Vulnerable. They can't be vulnerable. I just
Speak
told
for-
you.
I'd like to speak for all men.
Go ahead, Dennis. Speak for mankind.
Okay, for mankind, yeah, I just think it's like most of everything. It's the devil's in the details, and it's all relative. And I think historically, Patrick hit it on the head, having been at a all boys boarding school and the military. Certainly can appreciate that take. I don't know that, I mean, my personal feeling is that it's not one or the other, clearly. And there are some things that men seem to be better at, the obvious ones, like we have better upper body strength. So Susan's always reminding me of that every time something needs to be lifted. And so, but realistically, that's true, that it just makes sense that the division of labor might fall into what we're best at. And women tend to be, in my experience, more compassionate and interested in having everyone have their say and get together and understand each other and not be offending anyone, whereas men might be more along the lines of winning and losing, and they need to be on top because that's the one who gets to the elk first gets to take it home, or whatever, however that came to be. So I guess I'm rambling, but the point was, for me, that there's, we have hopefully evolved, and I see the evolution is that we should appreciate our natural abilities. And I don't think it's clearly not as simple as men and women. It's just, you can't divide it that way. I know a lot of very compassionate women, and I know a lot of very hard men, and I know a lot of hard women. And unfortunately, most of the women who have been successful, like in politics, are being better men than men were. They beat them at their own game. Mm-hmm. And I see that as a very unfortunate take, because I think that the compassionate, caring, connecting power that females seem to have more innately should be the leading power. And so I think we should have more women deciding on what we're supposed to be doing, and then give it to the men to get her done, because we enjoy that. I'm going to speak for all mankind on that and say that men like getting it done. And if the women would be guiding, then we would be with those qualities. Now, there are plenty of men that have those qualities, but just as a whole, I think that it would be better to have a council of women. We actually went to Burning Man and listened to a lady speak on this, and it really resonated as true, that the women should be the policymaker, and the women should select among themselves the best woman to be the leader. So, you can't say that all women are that, but if you take all of the women and let the women decide which one of them is the essence of judgment, and then have the men be all of the different cabinet members getting her done, once you get the ideas going. So I don't know that that's off point, but Patrick got me going on what men and women are doing, and what we have different
takes. That's my take on that.
Well, as long as I've got the mic, I'm going to have to step in here too. That was a TED Talk that we heard, and I'm going to try to look it up and see if we can bring it to this group, because I think it would be a very interesting discussion. But it was that males and females have assumed we now view as traditional because they had to. For a while, we didn't have birth control, so women had babies and we stayed at home, and that was the way it was. And men went out and got the food. That was the way it was. The idea was to make those traditional roles. But as it says, we're evolving. We don't have to stay home and the guys don't have to go kill the elk. So it's now a wonderful opportunity to evolve and to share with one another each other's strengths, and without adopting the other person's complete identity, to still be more of who we are capable of being, which is what Brene, to bring it full circle, this is what we're talking about, is to become able to reveal your truest self, what there is deep in the depths of your being that for whatever reason you have felt uncomfortable about revealing, whether it was societal or situational. There are parts of each of us which have gone untended. To a certain extent, we have each numbed those parts of ourselves. Those are the feelings that we numb, as she says, with food or alcohol or drugs, rather than bringing them forth as a gift to ourselves. And then once we gift ourselves with the realization that we have that expanded being, we can reveal them and use them to embrace, to be kinder, gentler, more accepting to those other aspects of others. And I'm going to turn over the mic because I've talked too long.
That was wonderful. Thank you for that. We have just a little bit of time left, and we have 2 questions that we want to try to get to. Here's the first one. What does vulnerability, or how does vulnerability have a spiritual quality about it?
In here you got it.
Yeah, Neil? No? Okay.
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay. So, Neil, did you want to answer the question, or are you just chiming in?
Well, the idea of all my life I've been told to shut up. And so it's, and so, yes, I think males are definitely at a disadvantage because they're not allowed to feel their feelings and express themselves. And it's really, Brene Brown is just a revelation, talking about vulnerability and talking about humility at the same time.
Yes. How about, but the idea of spirituality, where do those 2 connect, spirituality and vulnerability?
Oh.
Barb.
And Barb, yeah. Hold on, Leo. Unmute, Barb.
Right here.
I
think when we open ourselves up and our truest self comes forward, obviously that's our full connection with the divine us, right? And so that is the full circle of our divinity on earth, is showing our connection to the universe, truly our true essence.
Thank you for that. That's great. Anybody else? Oh.
But yes, I'm agreeing so much with, not that y'all care, I know you don't care if I agree, but I do. And with what Barb said, well, going back talking about, the difference between men and women, I guess, yes, there is a difference. And it does have to do with biology. And yes, they do have more upper body strength. And they should be doing the lifting. So but we get to have the babies. But anyway, I think that what Barb just said is connecting with our true self. And that's the difference, how that has to do in a spiritual sense, our vulnerability, is that we're not connecting with the ego, but we're connecting with our divine self, our spiritual self. And this is from my Zoom meeting yesterday with my Sufi teaching, and it's just something that, of course, we would believe in our church. In love, reverence, and humility, I surrender to thee and thee alone, and thou dost raise me spiritually. So when we get out of our way of being just a human and recognize that we are divine, then that is, I think, that we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We keep trusting, and we recognize that we are perfect and holy in each moment. And just as the tiger cubs or the puppies or the kittens wrestle around with each other, we do that on many different levels. You know, the guys did it a little differently than what the girls did it when they were little boys, you know, generally. But we allow ourselves to be what you might consider be knocked down in these little, you know, discussions. But then we come up, we come to our feet, we don't stay down. And then if we have a disagreement with another person, we just say, yeah, that was good. That was a good match. We, you know, we can come to an agreement. Mostly what we disagree on is just a small percentage of who we are. You know, we're 99 and 4400% in agreement with probably every person on the planet. And yet we focus on that one little thorn in our side about what we do disagree on. And that's just what human nature does. I mean, you know, whether it's the news, whether it's anything, if your foot hurts, that's all you can think about, you know, even though the rest of your body is in absolute perfect harmony. And so I think it has to do with the glass half full and the glass half empty, or something like that.
Kim.
Yeah, I love what I'm hearing here. Thank you for letting me join your meeting.
We love interlopers.
Thanks.
Come back anytime. Interlope anytime.
Thank you. Connecting vulnerability with spirituality. I guess as I'm listening to you all, I'm thinking, I'm here on this earth to learn. I'm not here to be right. Because in order for me to be a part of a bigger greatness, the great I am, I'm here to be instructed and learn. So maybe my strength is in listening and learning. And maybe that's not an easy thing to do, but maybe I do believe that's what I'm supposed to do here. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for that.
That's beautiful.
That's really wonderful. We're getting real close. Does anybody have any other reactions to that?
Somebody has a phone ringing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, in listening to Barb and Susan, what resonated for me was the authenticity part of Brene Brown's talk. I mean, I think that's really the essence of it. So being your authentic self, whatever that is, and you've been told what you're supposed to be as a man or a woman, and that's obviously so artificial and superficial or whatever. We're all this wonderful mad where I'm doing things that men aren't supposed to do. And if you are constantly told that that's wrong, then that's going to influence your life. And I think we live in at least on the liberal side, the progressive side, we're all at.
Hey, Beth, could you
the bottom line is authenticity for me. I'm sorry.
I was just asking if Beth could mute while you're talking. Yeah.
Beth has something to say, though. She's been raising her hand.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay.
Dennis, were you done?
Yeah. Go ahead,
Okay.
Beth.
I wanted to come at this from the perspective of my own experience. And I think all of you know that I'm in recovery from alcoholism for a number of years. I've been on both sides of the fence with this. Prior to my recovery, it was all about being right. It was always about having to have the answer. And I think a lot of that had to do with the home that I was raised in and what was going on there. It was just kind of scary. So I had to have the answer. Then I got into my recovery and I really discovered the God of my understanding, and everything changed because then I did become a student. That was a time where I felt like I could be vulnerable and it was okay to do that. It was okay. It felt safe now. So my experience now is that I love being the student. I love listening to others, but I have an opinion on things and I feel it's valuable to me. So I feel it's worth sharing, but I don't have to necessarily have to agree with me. And there's a real freedom in that. I want to use an old cliche, but it's not appropriate for church, but opinions alike.
And you know what? We
know
think
the deal.
there's
And everybody
power.
has one.
When Brene Brown talks about the power of vulnerability, I think you just described it. The freedom that it brings. Yeah.
That's what I found, is that I became freer as a person. I had more to say and it was safer to say it. But I had to let go of the concept that I had to have the answers.
Wow.
I had to completely change my thinking on that. So, and you all have so much to bring to me, not just you, but I mean, everybody that I'm in contact with, including my clients, they have so much that they teach me about life. So I just think it's okay to be vulnerable is what I discovered.
The
Lorraine, you have your hand up.
Yeah. I'm sorry, am I taking over somebody's spot?
Yeah, I was just trying to get to Lorraine, who'd had her hand up for a long time. You still want to talk?
No, I talked and I put my hand down. I did a thumbs up. Maybe that's what you saw.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. But thank you.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thank
Susan?
you for that opportunity.
Yeah.
The phrase that has come to me during the time that I was listening to the Brene Brown and again this morning, and in the bigger context of us being in isolation and not knowing when we're going to be out. And there's a discomfort in not knowing. And sometimes that comes out as not knowing whether we're right, so we say we're right. Mm-hmm. The phrase that comes to me that's helpful is that I'm at this point in my life trying to live in the mystery. The questions may or may not have answers that I will ever know in my lifetime. And I'm vulnerable to the learning instead of closing myself off in rightness. And that's very freeing, to be living in the mystery. That's it.
Great. Yeah, that speaks again to the power of vulnerability, to be able to have that and do that. We're gonna wrap up.
It's 10:57. Can you believe it?
That just went flying by. That was really a wonderful discussion. And plus, there were things that we talked about that had to do with humility and trust on either side of vulnerability. So next week, there will be a video on trust for you to look at. And then we'll do the same thing again, talking about trust in the way it integrates into the power of vulnerability and humility as well. So stay tuned.